How's it going, guys? As promised, I am going to be giving you guys a Holy Paladin guide. Before I do this, I'm just going to let you guys know that I do not think I am the best Holy Paladin in the world by any means. And there's definitely people that may disagree with some of my takes, or have a different opinion, whatever. I just want to share the information that has been working for me decently well. Highest rating in threes is 27-29. That's, pretty high. Highest rating in shuffle is 25-28, in top 10, whatever. So just, if I can give you guys some information to help you guys improve with things that work for me, that is good enough for me. So if you guys aren't familiar with my guides, I kind of generally give like a little layout of the order in which I want to talk about things. That way you guys can kind of skip around, jump around if you're not interested in some of the stuff. And you just kind of want to fast forward through the process. So first thing I want to talk about is races. I still personally think that Dwarf or Dark Iron Dwarf still has pretty good value just based off of Fire Blood or, Stone Form. It removes poisons, it removes bleeds, it removes magic effects. Some of the main ways I like to use it is to get out of a root beam. It obviously puts your cooldown, your trinket on a 30-second cooldown, but it is still a way to get out of root beam. You can use it on Shadow Priest Silence. You can use it on Strangulate Silence. And then if you ever fight against Feral Druids or Assassination Rogues or Unholy Decays, just using it in general, getting like some of that stuff off and getting the extra intellect is pretty valuable. Some of the other options are, if you wanted to, you could play human. That would essentially give you some more secondary stats and also kind of give you a minute 30 cooldown trinket, because it's minute 30 is the shared cooldown between human, racial, and your trinket. So that way you could trinket out of a stun 30 seconds faster. It's honestly not terrible. Potentially even better in some matchups. I was thinking about potentially playing a Draenei just for Gift of the Naru and increased intellect baseline. I still think Dwarf is kind of better. And then you have Tauren for, War Stomp and extra HP. Also increased critical strike damage and healing. I think regular Dwarf has that too, which is actually probably pretty good for Paladin as well, but I'm just Dark Iron Dwarf. It is what it is. I don't think it's really a huge impact depending on what racial you want to play. I just think that one of the dwarf racials is probably the most beneficial, I guess. Something I would want to play in a tournament setting. Pros and cons of Paladin right now is, I would say the biggest con of Holy Paladin is with the mana adjustments is you can definitely go but I think there is a lot of ways that you could kind of counteract that. I think I've been playing like 8, 9, 10-minute games without like any drinks. Let's see if I could find some examples here. And some of those games I do use Divine Play. So this is a 8-minute game where I had 0 drinks and I restored 400,000 mana. So Paladins are definitely still very viable. Granted, I did have a Boomkin with me in this game, so I do get like a value from Innervate. But we're facing a top tier team here that does quite a bit of damage and has quite a bit of CC. But you can definitely still go the distance with Paladin. Some people come in my chat and they're like, Cdew, I'm in 2 minutes. Like, there's nothing I can do about it. That's not true. All right, so just pay attention here. We'll talk about that. Some of the other cons of Holy Paladin is you basically have no hot healing, and you have you're very weak when you get CC'd, I guess. I mean, you have a lot of cooldowns, and that's been Paladin's like one of their biggest strengths for a really long time. Is if you can play the game, just kind of cycling through your cooldowns and constantly like rotating through those cooldowns, you kind of sometimes feel like a brick wall where, it feels like everyone on your team is just not a great target, and you're constantly, putting up damage reductions or immunities and getting out of crowd control, trinket, bubble, bop, etc. And you're really difficult to kill. But if you do get caught in some of those, having no hots up, there's no fail safe. There's no safety net. So sometimes when I'm losing on Holy Paladin, I like to log on Preservation Evoker and just be like, oh, nice, I just got full fear into full poly, and I have the Dream Projection, the Dream Breath, the Reversion out, and it feels really nice. The pros are obviously, if you're not in crowd control as a Holy Paladin and you have mana, you're not dying. Just like straight up. If you're rotating your cooldowns well, and you're doing your rotation properly, and you have mana to work with, you just have an enormous amount of healing. This isn't always the case in Shuffle. If you're in like Deep Damp, by the way, you can definitely lose in Shuffle. But yeah, it's definitely really, really solid. And some of their other pros are they have really good CC with Hodge Repentance, and they also have some pretty decent burst. Not better than like I would say Prez, but definitely pretty good. We're gonna go over add-ons real quick. I'm gonna kind of breeze through this. just because I do it in every single guide, but if you've never seen one before, big debuff shows the debuffs highlighted on party frames and, you know, kind of blows them up to show you which ones are more important to see. Details is the damage meter here to kind of figure everything out. Diminish shows DRs on your party members, so if you're curious if they're coming off stun DR, if you're curious if you're coming off stun DR. Frame sort is the new add-on that allows you to sort your frames for solo shuffle. Sort group I think broke, and the script also broke, so frame sort is definitely the one that you want to download if you like want to be on the bottom or top of the frames every time. Nameplate buffs is my nameplate buff add-on. Shocker. Omnibar shows the cooldown of like enemy CDs, kicks, crowd controls, things like that. Omni CD shows my friendly CDs cooldowns, defensive, and I also have it set up to show kicks. Party pet fixes the party pet frames. S Arena updated is my arena frames. Trophy GCD is what I use to track my globals that, you know, I kind of use it for you guys, but if you're a streamer, if you are streaming or a streamer and you want to also potentially record your own gameplay to see what you're doing in certain situations, you could definitely download that. And then weak Rs are obviously super important for the game. Some weak Rs that I actually really like on Paladin is showing Forb on myself. It's kind of nice. I feel like I would struggle kind of like recognizing like when I would actually come off Forb if I like want to bop again or like lay on hands. And then Forb on raid frame. Can't really see this one, but it shows up as a little forbearance right next to the raid frame. But yeah, weak Rs are obviously really important. I don't use too many on the Paladin though. Macros, I don't think I have any crazy macros on Paladin, just kind of all standard stuff. Target self, holy shock. This is literally just cast divine protection, but I liked it to look like the old shield wall icon. Cast sequence macro between auras. Target hammer wrath, target judgment, daybreak with unused trinket, which I don't actually use. Like this isn't even on my bar. So focus, hodge, bop party 1, bop party 2, you know, freedom 1, freedom 2, dispel 1, dispel 2, sack player 1, sack player 2, whatever, you know, just really standard stuff. Focus, rebuke. This actually, excuse me, this is a rebuke Light of the Martyr macro, but you don't even spec into Light of the Martyr these days, so stop casting and Blessing of Sacrifice. But yeah, really sack party 1, sack party 2. Really standard macros on Holy Paladin. I do have a remove bop for when I fight against mages. If I'm like going against a rogue and I like bop a blind, I instantly cancel aura it, so the mage can't steal it, and then survive against my melee. Just to cancel aura Blessing and Protection macro. Have it in my drink keybind. This is actually a bit of a, I don't want to say controversial, but this is definitely a topic that I think other people have different outlooks on what stats they should be going. I personally am going maximum crit. I basically have no haste outside of the tier gear that I have. Like none of my gear has haste on it. So in PvP, I have 29% crit. I do have some mastery. My verse is actually probably a lot lower than it should be. I don't think I should probably have like 4% more verse in a perfect world. So my gear is a little obscure at the moment, but yeah, some of my crafted pieces just have mastery on it to verse. I do like mastery as kind of like my secondary. So it's like kind of like crit mastery, and then haste is kind of you get what you get. I've been playing with I kind of cycle through all 3 of my trinkets. I use the haste trinket when I feel like I'm not going to be a kill target, Battle Master when I am going to be a kill target, and I like the on use trinket for when I play Divine Plea. That way every 1 minute when I use Daybreak and I get that 30% healing reduction, I have the on use trinket to kind of like beef up my heals a little bit to make it feel like I don't fall as far behind. But yeah, it's basically it for stats. I like to prioritize crit as my main stat because I think critting is the whole Paladin class. I think it increases your healing by the most, and also it gives you Infusion of Light, and Infusion of Light is like kind of how you don't Flash of Light is 0 mana with Infusion of Light. So it's just really important to have crit, that is. The water that I use is from the auction house. It's just called like Dragon Spittle, delicious Dragon Spittle. Don't buy the stuff from the vendor. It's not as good. I think technically there is a profession that crafts this and they put that on the auction house. I don't know what that profession is, so if you want to look into it, you could probably craft it. For crafted gear, I am currently using the boots. I think the boots are great. Kind of basically anytime you dispel, I shouldn't say any, it's got a 30-second CD, but you know, generally you're gonna have a pretty good uptime on having 510 intellect. You know, it's just like a little mini proc trinket. It's pretty solid overall. And then I'm just kind of bouncing between Spore Cloak for, like I said, when I feel like I can be a kill target, specifically against like things like sub rogues, or like even other caster cleaves that could like hard swap to me. It feels pretty good, but then I just have a alternative cloak with precog. Precog is pretty good in general. I was playing without it because I was using Spore Cloak, but now I'm kind of cycling between both of them. So if you kind of feel like you're not getting a ton of value out of your precog and you would like to, you know, pop on the Spore Cloak for extra safety, it's definitely pretty solid. And then in terms of like other crafted gear, all the gear that you want on Paladin can easily be like just be all PvP gear. The only question is if you want to lower your versatility to get some of that like increased critical strike rating, increased mastery rating, because basically the PvP gear is very high on verse. So if you kind of like wanted to lose some verse and maybe like balance it out, or you know, do what I did, which in some cases just went crit mastery instead of crit verse, both are definitely viable options. So that's basically the only reason to get any of the crafted gear. But if you don't want to, you don't have to worry. You can totally go ahead and be lazy and just be like a heavy verse paladin. It's not a bad stat for you. For the tier gear, you're always going to use the helm, the shoulders, and the chest. And then you just cycle between what you don't want on the fourth piece, sorry, between the gloves and the legs. Technically, I think the gloves might be better than the legs, but I replaced the gloves. Maybe eventually I'll switch that because these are actually haste crit and these are haste mastery, and I technically I want the crit over the mastery, but it doesn't really matter. It's very minor. So yeah, the helm, the shoulders, and the chest, and then you know, legs or gloves, whatever you're feeling. If you want a little bit more mastery, or if you want a little bit more crit, pretty minor overall. But yeah, 4-piece is definitely worth it. 2-piece, just obviously understand that it is nerfed by half an arena, but Holy Shot critical strikes heal for 30% more, and they reduce the cooldown of Prism by 0.5. It might even be 0 in arena. And then Holy Prism heals for 40% more in PvP and also generates 3 Holy Power. It feels very nice to have the Holy Prism generate 3 Holy Power because it just kind of like fits in really well into your rotation. Spec and Honor Talents. So this is the spec that I was playing in the last solo shuffle. My specs are a little bit weird, and I'm going to talk about them. Basically in solo shuffle, I personally have been playing single glimmer. I kind of like it more, and outside of solo shuffle, I've been playing illumination because I kind of divine toll into daybreak for maximum mana efficiency, unless I'm playing divine plea, which we'll talk about in a second. But this is basically my solo shuffle spec. I know that a lot of people personally like Tower of Radiance. I'm not saying don't play it. By all means, if you want to play it, feel free to play it. I just feel like I always have such an excess of holy power that I genuinely do not need it. I do cast a lot more flashlights than I did originally at the start of the patch because they're 0 mana and we do have mana issues now, but I just feel like the holy power that I gain from Tower Radiance always feels really wasted. I think the best way to use Tower Radiance is if you actually just want to get a bunch of denounces out, but obviously it's a little, you know, easier said than done because it is a cast. I only play Divine Resonance when I'm playing single Glimmer. I'll talk about that in a second, but yeah, this is kind of my solo shuffle build. If you wanted to, you know, swap it around a little bit and you wanted to play that talent, you can go ahead and drop Unwavering. I don't think you need short lay or for the mana in solo shuffle, but I do really like Unwavering Spirit, which is the short R mastery cooldown. It makes it a 1.5 CD, and the reason why I like this is because if you fight any classes that have like a 1.5 cooldown, 2 of those classes are Unholy Decay right now is Unholy Assault, which is a 1.5 CD, and Windwalker Monk, which is Serenity on a 1.5 CD. Your Aura Mastery lines up perfectly with both of those CDs. So at the 1.5 mark, when you see them use those cooldowns, you pop Aura Mastery, and this is a 30% AoE damage reduction for 8 seconds, and it just lines up beautifully. We'll talk about this a little bit more in like the cooldown rotation, but basically Devotion Aura outside of Arena is 15% damage reduction. Inside Arena, it's buffed to 30% damage reduction. So having that 1.5 CD lines up really, really well. Going outside of my solo shuffle spec here, I will play, unless I'm playing Divine Plea, which we'll talk about in a second. We'll talk about our non-Divine Plea build right now. This is what I play. So the reason why I don't like this capstone here is because when you're playing for mana, you will always Divine Toll into a Daybreak, which will give you the most mana out of your Daybreak. It's how you play like really mana efficient. I can show you that right now. Basically, you just put up 5 Glimmers plus, then press Daybreak, but you already have a couple Glimmers out, so you know you should end up getting more. But yeah, you just Divine Toll. You can do it offensively or defensively. This should put up 5 Glimmers. There's probably 2, like, you know, on some of these things here. Either way. Yeah, they were over there. So that puts up 5. Then you Daybreak, which gives you the most mana. And the reason why I don't like the short CD on Divine Toll is because it's a 1-minute CD anyway, and you want to line it up with your other 1-minute CD. So there's no reason to have a shortened CD. On top of that, this Divine Resonance, the Holy Shocks that this cast are random. So like if I Divine Toll this thing right here, there could be a Holy Shock here after, there could be a Holy Shock here after, and every single, I'll talk about this a little bit later in the healing rotation, every single Glimmer of Light that you put out makes the Glimmer of Light technically better by like 6%, but it also splits it in half, right? So it's like, if there's a Glimmer here, how much does this Glimmer heal for? This Glimmer healed for either 28k or 36k, I'm not sure, and then you put a Glimmer here. Now it's going to heal for half. So there it is, 16k instead of the 32 or whatever it was. So you putting out like literally 3 random Glimmer of Lights on targets that could be completely irrelevant. They could be enemies. It's gonna really hurt your healing. It's something that I was doing at the start of the patch. I was putting out like a ton of Glimmer of Lights. I want to Glimmer of Light out on my entire team. I want to Glimmer of Light out on all my enemies, and all it was doing was crushing my Glimmer of Light healing for the people that I needed it on single target. On top of the fact that it's removing like the DR on the damage reduction, or it's like spreading that damage reduction out more. So it's really bad to like split your Glimmers up on targets that don't actually need Glimmer. It's something that you shouldn't do. This is generally my like 3v3 spec right here. I will make a, like, if I feel like it's going to be kind of like a dampening match where there's not a ton of cleave damage, I will make this switch right here where I have the beacon. I don't have the, like, you know, stronger beacon, but I do think that I'm going to get 2 lay on hands, which also is going to give me mana. So I'll make that trade right there. And then also, if there's not like one of those 1.5 minute classes and they're like 2-minute classes, I'll make this trade here instead. So for example, if there's no Windwalker, which has the minute 30 CD, if there's no, you know, Demo Lock, which has the Tyrant on a minute 30, if there's no Unholy Decay, which has their Unholy Assault on a minute 30, I could drop this cooldown right here. And then you're just going to match your 2-minute RM Mastery to things like Power Infusion, what other, you know, Wings from Ret Pally, Incarn from Boomkins, things like that. So you just match this to the 2-minute CDs instead of the 1.5-minute CDs, and then you can make that talent switch there. Oh yeah, this is also like a flex point too. Like you could kind of do whatever you want. If you're getting trained, you could do Judgment, or sorry, you could do Armor. You know, if you want Disease Dispel for like DKs and Shadow Priest, you can do that here. You can move this point around, but generally these are the points. You could play Blind if you want. I've been personally preferring Repentance. I personally never play Hand of Divinity. I don't think it's necessary. I'm a Divine Favor kind of guy. I know a lot of people like Hand of Divinity, so it's up to you. Oh, we didn't talk about Honor Talents, excuse me. I always make this mistake in my guides. So when I want to use Divine Plea, I will no longer spec into Illumination. And then you could play Blessed Focus if you wanted, but I kind of just prefer to have like the ability to have 3 Glimmers. And then you also have the ability to remove Shining Righteousness, because I will generally drop Denounce for Divine Plea, but it kind of depends on the matchup. So, for example, one of the reasons why I want to play Divine Plea is it will be more mana overall, but the main thing is can you get multiple Glimmers out? Okay, that's the main thing. So for example, yesterday I was playing against like an Arcane Mage, Arcane Mage Healer, Windwalker. I went Divine Plea. Now excuse my incredibly awful paint skills, but you know, if these are my 3 members here and we have 3 Divine Pleas out, this is 3. And then you have like a Mage over here, and then like an Druid over here, and then like a Windwalker Monk here. You can't Divine Toll and get all these people with Glimmer of Light, which will give you 6. So you're only getting 4. You're only getting 4 Glimmers for your Daybreak, which is not enough to actually sustain on mana. So you're actually forced to play Divine Plea. So I would drop Denounce for that. But if you're playing Divine Plea into Wizards, you could drop like the double bop and make that decision instead, which means you would still play Shining Righteousness. But yeah, you don't have to play Overflowing Light. Like I said, you could play Tower of Radiance. You know, if you want to play Single Glimmer, you can play Single Glimmer. It's just basically a flex point. Just understand that you should drop this talent if you're not playing Denounce. Now going back to honor talents in general, these are the 3 honor talents I basically always play, flexing between these 2 for Divine Plea, one of the 2. I really like Aura Mastery, minus 60-second cooldown, because I kind of told you how I line those CDs up with, you know, a minute and a half cooldowns or 2-minute cooldowns, and if you don't play Divine Vision, it kind of like screws over that that ability completely. Like you will no longer be able to line that up with anything. I do know some people like Searing Glare. I personally, I don't think it's great. You know, I don't mean to rain on your parade if you're a big Searing Glare fan, but whenever it hits my teammates, I'm like, oh, you know, I'll just dispel one and the other one's 4 seconds long. I don't really care. Maybe it's awesome in solo shuffle. You know, I've gotten Searing Glared before and hodged into it and missed. But I'm personally not a huge fan of it. I don't think it's super impactful. Judgments of the Pure, you can use to get out of root beams. It's basically like the only reason I could see you could ever use it. You know, maybe you got to drop Denounce to play Judgments of the Pure, or, you know, if it's a Wizard Cleave, you could drop Blessed Hands. But if you're in a root beam, you could judge while you're root beamed. If the root is the only debuff on you, it will dispel the root. You can walk out. Hollow Ground is actually super good against Frost Mages if you could, you know, squeeze that in. You might need to drop Denounce for that one as well, because you probably want a Divine Vision and Wings on their Icy Veins. But and then you could even get like a little freaky if you're dropping the Denounce, and you could put like the point into Righteous Judgment, which, you know, your judge has a 50% chance to drop a Consecrate, and your melee are gonna love you. When this Hollow Ground is down, you are no longer slowed by a Frost Mage for the entire duration it's down, and you're in it. It's just freedom, and they can't steal it, so it's really nice. Cleanse the Weak I don't think is particularly that great. Spreading the Word, last time I checked, literally doesn't work half the time. Darkest for the Dawn, we don't use Light of Dawn. Ultimate Sack is just not necessary. Sack is already 45% damage reduction. I just don't think you need it, and Avenging Light is completely worthless. So, yeah, you could bounce around between those under talents. And yeah, Healing Rotation for Holy Paladin. The main thing that I found on Holy Paladin is trying really, really hard not to Holy Shock more targets than you need, because you don't want to spread out the Glimmer. So if this is your main target, you can put all your Holy Shocks on this target, and what you're going to do is you're going to use your Flashlights and your Holy Prisms and your Word of Glories to heal the off target, to keep the Glimmer on your main target for the damage reduction and the healing. The more you spread out the Glimmer, I personally think the worse it is, kind of. Technically it does more healing, so if you're healing through like pure rot damage, spreading that Glimmer out is completely fine. But if it's more of like a single target and these guys are just kind of like rotting down casually, then you only want one Glimmer out. And this is like one of the biggest changes that I made when I first started playing Holy Pally this patch, is not spreading these Glimmers out. So just like as an example here, so this guy has you know, the one Glimmer out. This guy's dying, we'll hit him with a Wog. You know, we could do another Holy Shock here, we could do a Flashlight, we could do a Flashlight, and then we put more Holy Shocks on this guy, put a Word of Glory on this guy, Holy Prism, get 3 Holy Power, we can Wog again, and we're just kind of keeping one Glimmer out. Obviously, if you need to get more than one Glimmer out to heal through the damage, it's fine, but just understand that when you spread those Glimmers out, it's going to be less burst healing on Glimmer, and then also the damage reduction, this is only 8% in PvP, will get split. So if you're keeping one Glimmer out and you're playing Dev Aura, this guy right here has a permanent 11% damage reduction, and it will be noticeable. 3 from this and 8 from this. So it's really, really nice. The person with the one Glimmer feels fairly tanky. One thing you want to never do is you never want to cast Flashlight without Infusion of Light, or you are asking to I would say 1 out of 100 Flashlights I cast are without Infusion of Light, and those Flashlights are probably in solo shuffle when you're not going to run out of mana anyway. Basically, when you have Infusion of Light up, your Flashlight goes from 9,000 mana, which is obviously really bad, to legitimately 0 mana. It goes from super expensive to 100% free. All right? So when you're trying to heal efficiently and you have breathing room, like right now, you know, use these infusions up before you use your next flashlight, you know? Right now, like, you can use these 2 infusions before you use your next flashlight, or excuse me, your holy shock. Otherwise, you're potentially wasting infusion procs. So you want to make sure you're weaving in the infusions when you can, if you can. You don't always have to do it. If you're in a situation where you feel like you can't cast, or, you know, there's interrupts available, the pressure is too high, you got to use instants, use as many holy shocks as you want. But understand, if you are healing efficiently, every time you get these infusion procs, you want to use them. At the start of the patch, I would make sure that I used a judgment every single time that I got an infusion proc. The judgment is a net loss in terms of mana gained versus mana spent. But it's still good to use if you don't think it's going to come down to mana. So aka solo shuffle or fast-paced threes game. And if you can't cast, okay? So if you are struggling with getting cast out, using a judgment for, you know, your greater judgment is 100% fine. It does put up a very reasonable debuff. The next 152,000 damage will be absorbed. So yeah, keep that in mind as well. Judgment is very good, but not as efficient. So understand that it's not as efficient. And then yeah, your healing rotation is very simple. Basically, you want a holy shock on CD, while also using infusions as often as possible. You want to try not to overcap on holy power. There are some situations where I do overcap on holy power. Basically, those situations are if someone is in desperate need of dying and I have a triple holy shock available. Right now I have 5 holy power, but they are going to die. Sometimes I will hit them with the triple holy shock and waste a 3 holy power, then wog, and then triple holy shock again. But that's like the only time I'm really overcapped on holy power. And then when to use holy prism. Holy prism is 100% for me, a filler ability to generate 3 holy power. So I'm just going to heal this dummy casually right now, keeping 1 glimmer up on this guy, you know, healing this guy without putting a glimmer up on him. And then you'll kind of see, eventually, I'm going to run out of holy shocks, and I'm going to run out of flashlights. And then that's kind of like when I will prism. You know what I mean? So like right now, we got, well, we kind of procced here, so we got a little lucky. But this would be the time. I have no infusion. I have no holy shock. Boom. We send a prism. We kind of reset a couple globals there. We get 2 free healing globals, and then we could kind of go again. I accidentally put a glimmer on this guy, whatever. But yeah, so basically, holy prism is kind of the filler. In solo shuffle, when I'm playing Blessed Focus, and I don't really care as much about mana because I'm not using Illumination, I use Daybreak as a 100% pure healing cooldown. I use it when I find it necessary, and then I Divine Toll whenever I want in between to build, Holy Power for healing. Outside of Solo Shuffle in 3v3 Arena, when I'm playing Illumination, I will basically Divine Toll and Daybreak almost immediately, just to get the ball rolling on mana. So like basically as soon as the game starts and I spend like a little bit of mana, that's when you Divine Toll and then you get the Daybreak going and you try and get the mana back. One thing I will say is don't Holy Shock a single target to get more mana from Daybreak, because you're losing, okay? Like for example, if you're like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna, I have a Glimmer on this guy, I want to get a Glimmer on that guy, and then Divine Toll and then Daybreak. Holy Shock costs 6,000 mana. That 1 Glimmer is only going to pull 3,000 mana back in, so it's not efficient. Just heal normally, and just Divine Toll into your Daybreak to get 5 more Glimmers out. If you have 2 or 3 Glimmers on you already, basically if you have more Glimmers on yourself than teammates, you can Divine Toll offensively, especially if there's a lot of pets like for Steamolocks, Unholy Decays, Enhancement Shamans if they have wolves out, sometimes, things like that. You can Divine Toll enemies to get more Glimmers and then pull back in more mana. You're never going to use Holy Light unless you're spec'd into Hand of Divinity. And yeah, we'll talk about tiers in a second in terms of like cooldown rotation, but yeah. Other than that, it's kind of just Holy Shock on CD. Weave in the infusions when you can. If you're not in desperate need of healing, you don't need to judge. It's okay, because it is a little inefficient. If you can cast Flash, that's great. And then, you know, just use Holy Prism as a filler and Wog every time you got enough Holy Power. It's really simple. I would say the main mistakes in terms of Holy Rotation is probably spreading your Glimmers out too much, not getting efficiency out of your Infusions of Light, potentially overcapping on Glimmer, and then, you know, also potentially Flash of Lighting or even judging without Infusion. You know, it's just not really great to do. Inefficient and not very effective. We will talk about damage rotation. Damage rotation is very simple. It's basically you have Judgment, Hammer, Wrath, Holy Shock, Denounce. So Denounce was added new here. Denounce is a cast. It will open up your tree. It does do quite a bit of damage. I don't really use Hammer, Wrath much anymore. So if you guys didn't realize, Hammer, Wrath it does cost mana in this patch. And last patch, or, you know, whatever, last season before the rework, it cost no mana. So before it was just free. It was free Holy Power. And it was really effective to use just for that one free Holy Power. Now, if you want to throw it, it's literally just for damage. You could try and execute people with it. You can throw it when you got wings up if you want. And it does do a decent chunk of damage, but, you know, and sometimes I will judge, I will Holy Shock, and I will Hammer, all for, you know, potential kill. And that kind of goes against, like, what I was saying with, like, when you use that Holy Shock, you will put a Glimmer up, and it will kind of make your Glimmers a little bit less effective. But sometimes it's definitely just worth it, you know? Denounce is like your main damaging spell. If you're ever like spamming Denounce, you could just target an enemy or a friendly real quick to shoot another Denounce because it gives you 3 Holy Power. That's probably potentially a bit more effective than using your Holy Prism offensively. I generally always use my Holy Prism defensively to get the 3 Holy Power use. And then the really, really big burst on Holy Power is literally just like, if you have wings up and you just want to denounce into like your triple Holy Shocks. Like this doesn't happen often, but when it does happen, when you're ahead and like you're far enough ahead where you can be offensive like this is just like absolutely crazy damage. So like right here, you have the Daybreak, and then you could just denounce into triple Holy Shock, and then denounce into triple Holy Shock, and then denounce into triple Holy Shock, and it does a lot of burst. So those triple Holy Shocks are immediately giving you enough Holy Power for another denounce, so you can just kind of really spam super hard. So yeah, if you're ever trying to do big damage, that's definitely going to be how you're going to do it. You know, don't get a little too crazy though, because you are using a lot of healing potential for that. I do use that combo sometimes, but, you know, sometimes for pressure, sometimes for kill. Cooldown rotation, this is going to be the most important section of the guide, because I think it's like how you survive on Paladin. I'm just typing out all of the CDs that you have in general. So you have Wings, you have Aura Mastery, you have Tears, you have Sack, Bubble Bop, Divine Favor. I mean, we could put in Toll / Daybreak, but it's more used for mana than anything else. I mean, you have your Wall. You obviously kind of use that as you see fit. And I think that's basically it. So I'm gonna type this out a little differently, and this is like basically how I script most games. So generally speaking, I'm dead serious when I say this. Like most games before combat starts, you start the game off with Tears, and what I like to do with Tears is obviously throw a couple Holy Shocks out after the Tears goes off, and, you know, I'm hoping to crit one of these Holy Shocks, but if you don't, whatever. But when I crit one of those Holy Shocks, I literally cast two free Flashlights immediately just to extend the Tears. I don't know why my Tears isn't extending right now. I feel like something bugged out there. That's really strange. It should extend, but yeah, basically at the start of the game, you get the Tears up, and you want to throw out a couple Holy Shocks to extend the Tears, but also, like I said, you can literally flash a light at full HP if you get that crit buff to extend this, the Tears as well, because you want it to be max. You want the Tears to be max duration. And another thing to note is that an early Divine Toll and an early Daybreak basically is going to give you like your full uptime on Tears. So if you felt like your Tears was kind of like falling off at the start of the game because you weren't getting enough, you know, Holy Shocks, flashes out, whatever, This is 5 Holy Shocks right there. That's 10 seconds. This is 6 seconds per Holy Shock with Daybreak, because it's 3 Holy Shocks. That's 6 more seconds, 6 more seconds, 6 more seconds. This is 28 seconds of tears added just right here with these 2 abilities. So definitely using those early, like when you get the tears up, is super solid. So generally speaking, I will tears super early, and then as soon as I see like my enemy CDs, Aura Mastery, and Wings, depending on the type of CD. So as soon as I know what I'm fighting against, I try and figure out like what I want to match cooldowns to. I match 2 minute, like minute and a half cooldowns to Aura Mastery, like we talked about earlier, Unholy Frenzy, Serenity, Demonic Tyrant, things like that. And then if it's just 2 minute cooldowns, I'll just match the 2 minute cooldowns with 2 minute cooldowns with Aura Mastery and Wings. So, you know, Boomkin CDs, you know, instantly 30% damage reduction into Wings, things like that. And then generally speaking, it's going to be Sack, you know, Sack, Divine Favor, Bop, Bubble between these CDs. So the first half of the CD matching is like something that I feel like has been super effective for me on Holy Pally. Like I think it's kind of pushed me you know, to make like significantly better trades and feel like my team is much stronger defensively. So definitely something that I would look to do, just the early tiers, and just recognize when those enemies use those CDs and make sure you match those CDs, and you're going to feel like a brick wall. I'm telling you, the Aura Mastery for 30% damage reduction in the Wings, it feels really good. In between that, you could throw out the Sack. Like I said, you know, you have Divine Favor. You want to make sure you use Divine Favor with a proc, because for some reason, Divine Favor doesn't actually reduce the mana cost of Flashlight. So if you do it without a proc, you're still going to be paying full. So right now it's 0. Press Divine Favor. It's still 9,000. It's supposed to be 4,500, but it's not. It's a bug. So you want to make sure you use that with a proc still. And then, you know, throw Bop and, you know, Bubble out. Bubble's generally going to be for CC. Bop, you know, taking too much physical damage. Pretty simple stuff. And just watch for, you know, your cooldowns to rotate back up. Lay on Hands, I actually personally like as a bit more of a reactive cooldown, where if I have Lay on Hands available, I'll be like a lot more greedy. You know what I mean? Like if I have Trinket Lay on Hands or Bubble Lay on Hands, I'll try and actually push those CCs to the last second, to where, like, you know what, maybe I can hold my Trinket here and just lay on Hands if I get out. But if I do have to Trinket, then I'll just Trinket Lay on Hands anyway. So Lay on Hands is kind of like my my safety net, where it's like I can hold on to a Trinket or Bubble longer, knowing that, you know, it doesn't matter if I bop super low or, you know, stuff like that. That's kind of how personally I use Lay on Hands, is like my Trinket reactive cooldown. Obviously you have your own wall, you use at your own discretion, you know, anytime you're taking damage, whatever. It's a pretty short CD. In terms of mana efficiency, we have talked about Daybreak quite a bit. Divine Tolling into Daybreak. We've talked about using Divine Plea. You just kind of, you know, use Daybreak on CD. You don't really need to worry about having multiple Glimmers out. And we're also going to talk about using Infusion. Well, we did talk about using Infusion. Basically, you know, every time you have Infusion, if you can cast Flashlight, you should cast Flashlight. That's going to help you be really mana efficient. But one little trick that I kind of learned is at the start of a game, just completely throw away Blessing of Summer. So you zone into Arena, you have 60 seconds before the gates open, just press Summer immediately. You're throwing away your first Summer, but what you're doing there is you're starting the game off one blessing away from Blessing of Winter. And one of the reasons why I like this as well is you're also starting with the CDR. So you start the game off and you go ahead and you toss your tears out, and you immediately give yourself the cooldown reduction, and you're immediately reducing the cooldown of tears. As soon as you go for that first Daybreak, your Daybreak and Divine Toll are also being reduced because you have the CDR and Blessing of Autumn. And it just feels really nice to have that CDR immediately. So, you know, you kind of start off the game here, and you already have CDR. And this CDR is also helping you get to Blessing of Winter faster. So you toss out all these abilities, and, you know, you get all your mana back from that first Daybreak. They're cooling down faster. You're getting to your Winter faster. And this is actually, like, if you're facing other Holy Paladins, this is actually a step that can keep you, you know, essentially Blessing of Winter gives like 40,000 mana. 40,000 ish mana just ahead of the game. So it feels really nice to skip that first blessing and just go ahead and use Summer right off the bat in the arena prep, so you're starting the game with the CDR. It's really, really nice. Positioning on Holy Paladin, I would say it's generally going to be defensive. But one thing that I'm learning in Shuffle is I do think that there's matchups where you do have to be a bit more offensive, where you got to kind of push in for Hodges, potentially get blinds or reps off. And also one thing that you should really try and take advantage of is Rebuke. I actually even spec into increase range on Rebuke because I think it's that good, getting kicks on clones. I don't really feel like I get a lot of kicks on heals, but definitely trying to like harass a DPS when your teammates are trying to get a kill, you know, going to kick a clone, going to kick a fear, Shadow Fury, you know, massive spell, whatever. It's pretty helpful. So generally speaking, it's probably going to be defensive positioning, trying to avoid CC, because CC definitely kind of crushes you on Holy Paladin. Up until that moment where you do kind of like want to push and go for a CC. I would say like if you don't have CDs, you probably don't want to go for CC. I think that's just kind of like a timeless tale where, you know, if you have no trinket, you have no bubble, you have no backup, you shouldn't be putting yourself in a situation to get that CC unless you're kind of like in an all-in moment, but definitely recognize what you have available to you. We kind of talk about, you know, CC and being offensive. What are some of the utility spells you have here as Paladin? One is definitely Freedom. This spell is something that you should kind of use it regularly. Sometimes I find myself not using it as much as I should. Just throw it out on a DPS. Be careful against mages. If you're trying to kill a mage and you're using Freedom, the mage is basically going to become unkillable. But just giving your DPS Freedom on CD, it's something that they probably don't even realize they want, and they might not even ask for, but just like kind of reactively doing it so they're just never slowed. It's going to be a pretty big difference maker. Dealing with kicks on Holy Paladin, one thing I will say is, kind of talked about utility. One of your other utility is Concentration Aura. I personally think that Aura Mastery is insanely good on Devotion. One thing that I don't do that I probably should do more often is swapping to Concentration Aura, especially if I'm playing with casters, in between the Aura Mastery cooldown, so kicks aren't as dangerous. But dealing with kicks is something where it's always going to be tough. You just got to try and fake in a different pattern. You can fake fast, you can fake late, you can fake in the middle, but you just never want to constantly fake in the same spot, because then you're too predictable, you know. But it will be easier to just kind of take interrupts if you are playing Concentration Aura in between your Aura Mastery cooldown. How to kite well and survive? I mean, Paladin is pretty self-explanatory in terms of that. You don't really have to cast a whole bunch. You just have Freedom and you have Horse. You can get away. Make sure you have your beacon on yourself if you are the one dying. And then other than that, you know, just try and get a couple fakes out when you can. But you should have kind of infinite holy power. You know what I mean? Which means you're always going to have enough holy power to always have instants. Like right now, I'm still haven't really ran out of instants, right? So if someone's training me in this situation, and I have been trained a bit before on Holy Paladin, it's kind of easy to get away. I guess you're like more susceptible to dying in stuns, right? You know, faking every here and there, but like still haven't ran out of instant healing, you know? You just have all these holy shocks, and you get your prism going, and you have the Word of Glories, and this is the first time I'm actually out of healing. But yeah, we kind of already talked a bit about all this stuff, offensive and defensive. In terms of compositions for Holy Paladin, it's really self-explanatory, man. The meta, I feel like it's not hard to understand what's really overpowered in this meta. So what do we got? We got Windwalkers, DKs, you know, sub-rogues. Mages are really good right now. SPs, Boomies, even Aug Evoker's probably still decent. If you're queuing with like any of these classes, you're probably going to be able to make like some sort of viable composition here. But yeah, you just kind of play the meta. I couldn't tell you like what is the best Pally comp right now. Just playing with the meta classes does help quite a bit. But yeah, I hope hopefully you're able to learn something from this guide. You know, the main complaint that I get is people saying that they're ooming too quickly. That is the biggest complaint. Using the Blessing of Spring in the starting room and just getting closer to that winner helps out a lot. Making sure you're Divine Tolling before your Daybreak helps out a lot. Switching over to Divine Plea if there's not enough targets for, you know, your Daybreak to, or for your Divine Toll to really get up 5 additional Holy Shocks, definitely something you could work with. Making sure that you never flash a light without infusion, and every time you do have an infusion, you try and really squeeze in those flash of lights. But yeah, Holy Pallies can definitely still go the distance with mana. So if you're ooming in just a couple of minutes, I definitely, I can say for sure that something is going wrong there. But yeah, you got to get the most out of your abilities now because your passive regen is so low. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, man, and hopefully you guys are able to learn something. And yeah, good luck.